Oh, yeah. Oh. I feel like such a nerd.
So Tears of the Kingdom is here. It is out. Just about everybody and their mother is playing it. In fact, there was one point this past weekend where I'm looking at my Nintendo Switch, and I've never seen more than 5 or 6 people playing at the same time. There was 13 people, and every single one of them was playing Tears of the Kingdom. That has to say something. Let's jump into the main thing here, which is this is absolutely a sequel to Breath of the Wild. There's nothing about this that stands on its own. And before with Zelda games, we have seen big shifts in art style, gameplay, mechanics, and even story. But in this, we are 2 to 3 years after Breath of the Wild, or at least that's what it feels like. Now, this is going to be somewhat of a review, but more just my excitement around this game. I am going to talk about some aspects of the game with expectation that you, the viewer, have already played through the tutorial area and have landed yourself in the main Hyrule floor. And I say it like that specifically. If you have not and you do not want to know anything about this game, at this point, see ya. But if you have played the first 2 to 3 hours, maybe even dabbled with some of the different levels, by levels I mean areas of this game, this is the video for you. So first things first, I will say that this is a sequel. And in saying that, it excites me because I have said before on streams that I would have loved to have that Men in Black moment where I completely forget my experience with Breath of the Wild and I get to do it again. And I tell you what, this game right here is exactly that. For someone who admittedly would consider Breath of the Wild to be my favorite Zelda game, and if you want to know how I came upon that conclusion, you should check out my new podcast, episode 3, Tears of the Kingdom, and that's spelled Tiers, is all about myself as well as my Bash brother Chase and our tier list, the official Bash Brothers tier list of all of the Zelda games. But back to this game. This game is a continuation, and the mechanics that you've learned to love, the gameplay, the button combinations that you have mastered over the years are back. You are sprinting, you are climbing anything, and you're flying just about anywhere you want to fly. And if you can see it, you can go to it. Now, there are few more things that add to the experience. One is all of the different Sheikah Slate things that existed before are gone. It's now this arm situation, which is fine because it's new, it's exciting, and the building mechanic that you have with Ultra Hand is top notch. You can build literally anything in this game, and there are quasi-physics that stick. Like if it is top heavy, it's going to lean side to side, and you just have to be a little bit conscious of the size of the structure you're creating. You can fly, you can attach something to your horse, and you can really just do whatever you want, which is awesome. A thing that I am starting to really enjoy is the exploration aspect of it. Something that I loved in Breath of the Wild is that you could go anywhere you wanted, and you really didn't have to progress the story immediately. You could explore. And I've been playing this game all weekend, and just upon finishing the tutorial area, you're tasked with going to a certain location to progress the story. I haven't done that yet, and I've spent well over 25 hours in this game over the weekend. I have not progressed the story once. And I have not just been running aimlessly. I've been doing shrines. I've been exploring caves to find rare items. And I've been even traveling to the newest area in this whole game, which is called the Depths. There's a whole underground to Hyrule, and the Depths feel akin to the Upside Down from Stranger Things. It's weird, it's ominous, it's dark, you can't see anything. And so the Depths have been this new mechanic that really actually stresses you out, but the exploration is top notch. Now, the quality of life improvements that they've made in this game are pretty significant, in my opinion. When you were over encumbered or you had too many items in a specific area and you went to open a chest and you didn't have enough space, you would then have to cancel out of that whole dialogue, drop the item manually, go back, reopen the chest, and do your thing. And I've always wondered, why didn't they just give you an option to immediately in that moment replace an item? And so it just pulls up whatever category you're in, bows, and then you just pick a bow to drop, and then you take what's in the chest, or you leave what's there in the chest because you don't want it. Well, now that is here, which is rad. Another thing you can do is you can attach just about any item to a weapon, which we've seen in the trailers. And I thought that was kind of hokey at first, but in this game, It's not. You can encounter enemies and get real creative. Go to mobs and camps where there's bokoblins and moblins, and you have to decide, how am I going to destroy these foes? And I've found myself grabbing a stick, running up to a TNT barrel, attaching a TNT barrel to the stick, and throwing it like a Molotov cocktail into the mob of enemies. And that is the way I destroyed multiple enemies. And that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to interacting with different items in the game. This game has so much more to offer than Breath of the Wild did, and within the first 30 minutes of playing this game, there's already more story than pretty much the entirety of Breath of the Wild. Now, that's not shots fired at Breath of the Wild. As I said, it's my favorite Zelda game, but this game absolutely delivers on every shortcoming that I felt in Breath of the Wild, such as quality of life improvements with the different things that you do with the items, the story being a little bit more involved, the side quests having some sort of uniformity, and some of them being much longer and called side adventures, which means that there is a lot more to it than just grabbing a few items, delivering your 90 rush rooms to a guy and getting, I don't know what, like 500 rupees or something. There is a lot to be discovered here. I mean, people are releasing videos about this and realizing that you can play for hours and hours and hours and not even progress the main story. There is content for days, and it's not meaningless content either, which is really, really exciting. Something that people often criticize was the shrine situation. And shrines are back. They're very much so here. But the way that these shrines exist are somewhat and somehow better than they were before. Before, it was mini puzzles. You'd be like, oh, this is interesting. I got to flip something upside down, do a little thing with my controller, and we're good to go. But when you left the shrine, there was not much to bring with you. You encountered this obstacle, you overcame the obstacle, and you're on to the next one. A lot of people were like, well, what if we took 20 shrines, combined them into a dungeon, and that was the way you got through the dungeon? And I thought that'd be pretty good based on the Breath of the Wild shrines. But in these shrines, in Tears of the Kingdom, it is almost like mini tutorials for you to discover more you can do with the different abilities, such as Ultra Hand or Fuse or any of these different things that exist in the game. So you go into a shrine, you are given a bunch of obstacles and weird situations. You're to build something, attach a rocket, launch it, try to hit a target. And now that you've done it, you realize, okay, well, now when I'm out of a shrine in an overworld, I can bring that same thing and see how I can get to a different location or overcome a different obstacle. These shrines are there instead of being just a mini puzzle or mini game to help you understand more and more of what you are capable of in the actual game itself, allowing you to reach weird areas. There is just so much to discover here, and I am unbelievably impressed with what there is to offer. Now, let's talk about some of the shortcomings. And well, a lot of people are mentioning there's performance issues. And I'll be the first to say there is about as many performance issues in Tears of the Kingdom as there are in Breath of the Wild. There are frame drops. There are areas where you just feel the slog of the environment being a little too much for the Switch to handle. And what impresses me, though, in this kind of situation is that the Switch is 6 years old. New hardware would have been nice, but it still can run it. And what's even more impressive is that somehow, some way, this game looks better than Breath of the Wild did, even though this game is much bigger. It has way more things that you can do in it, and it's on hardware that's 6 years old. I don't know how they pulled it off. By no means is it perfect. Would we have benefited from new hardware? Absolutely. But it's not at all unplayable like some games that have been released recently to the Series S or Series X, or even PlayStation 5 for that matter, or definitely the PC. This game plays much better in its current state than, I don't know, Jedi Survivor in its buggy state on PC, or Redfall in its somewhat unfinished state on Series X or Series S. This game really, truly encapsulates what can happen when developers as well as designers get together and say, how can we maximize and push the limits of the piece of hardware that we are given and somewhat surprise the audience by delivering a product that they didn't think was possible. And that just pretty much is Nintendo's shtick. They seem to do that on a regular basis. Now, whether you're a fan of Breath of the Wild or not, this game still is a load of fun. And whether you've played Breath of the Wild or not, you can still jump into this because they give you a somewhat recap, and this story stands on its own. And the mechanics don't at all rely on any previous knowledge. But if you do have previous knowledge, it does help bring that nostalgia factor in. And because you're in the same Hyrule that was Breath of the Wild, when you visit areas like Kakariko Village or Hateno, you are hit with blasts of nostalgia from when you played Breath of the Wild for the first time. I think that this is genius when it comes to a game like Tears of the Kingdom because it allows you to experience that kick up of dust, those feels that you had the first time you cracked into Breath of the Wild. It's simply a beautiful game, and in my opinion, it has become my favorite Zelda game thus far. And if they keep delivering on the promise as well as the experience that already exists, it can only get better. I am blown away by Tears of the Kingdom, and if you are someone who's like, I don't know, is it just $70 DLC? Let me assure you that it is not DLC. It is a sequel, and it is phenomenal. And if you liked Breath of the Wild, you'll love this. And if you thought Breath of the Wild just needed a little more narrative, you'll love this. But if you didn't like Breath of the Wild, you thought that the game style was a little too sandboxy, and you just were not into the amount of content that existed in a Zelda game should be linear, this game is probably not for you because it doesn't at all cater to the ways of old. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, stuff like that, or even Skyward Sword or Twilight Princess. None of those games resemble what's happening here. This is special. The lore is great, the gaming is fun, and I love it. Let me know in the comments how you feel about it, but most of all, happy gaming.